What's going on, everybody? This is the Jay-3 show. I'm Jared Sweat.
I'm Jordan Hill.
I'm Justin Hubbard.
We've got a good show for you today. We're going to take a recap of the South Carolina-Georgia game. A lot of us like the outcome. Gamecock fans, probably not so much. After that, we're going to preview the Southern game that's coming up tomorrow on Saturday. Next, we're going to take a look at the Falcons-Cowboys game coming up on Sunday. Weekend full of football. You won't want to miss it. And in our buzzer beater segment, is Chip Kelly smarter than everybody?
The record doesn't really make you think that, but we'll touch on it.
We'll discuss that later.
All right, we'll see if Chip Kelly really is smarter than everybody, as one of his players may or may not have said.
He may not even be smarter than a fifth grader, but we'll see.
We'll see. So, like I said, we're going to start the show off recapping Georgia versus South Carolina, in which Georgia won 52-20. So, Justin, you want to elaborate on it?
In case you missed it, Grayson Lambert, the guy who transferred from Virginia, who threw 11 interceptions to 10 touchdowns and had the confidence of almost nobody when he was named the starter, had arguably the best single-game performance in Georgia football history. He went 24 of 25 on passing, 330 passing yards, both career highs, and his completion percentage of 96 set an NCAA record. And he chipped in 3 touchdowns as well. What did you guys think about his game?
I was very impressed. Like you said, coming into the season when he won the job, everybody was sort of just like, uh-oh. I mean, because what he showed, he had small glimpses of brilliance at Virginia. The Cavaliers weren't very good, and he didn't really show much that made you think, oh, it's all on the team around him. You saw potential, but there was never like a Georgia just got a diamond in the rough kind of deal. But he looked awesome on Saturday, you know, albeit against the South Carolina defense that's not exactly the best in the nation. South Carolina's struggling right now, but he put it where they needed to be, where the ball needed to be more often than not. Also got to give it to his receivers for making the plays, but it was a very impressive performance, and it was something that he really needed after the bad start against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, from what I saw from Grayson, it was a phenomenal performance. The one incompletion was a throwaway in which he just didn't have any other option than to throw it away. So kudos to him. Kudos to the offensive line for giving him time back there. I mean, they didn't give up any sacks, and it was just an overall great performance by this Georgia offense. The offensive line, like I said, was in sync. And, I mean, even if Grayson put it exactly where it needed to, if those receivers don't make those catches, and there were some tough catches. What came to mind was the tying reception, which tied the NCAA record for most consecutive completions, in which Malcolm Mitchell caught it over on the left side of the field. That was a back shoulder catch that a lot of receivers would not have made. So kudos to the receiving corps for making some tough catches. And, I mean, it was just a great performance by all. So the fact that he came out and just put on the gunslinger mentality after his questionable performance up at Vanderbilt, it was great to say the least.
And the one incompletion, talking with Jeff Blazevich earlier in the week, he said it was a miscommunication with the receivers. Somebody ran the wrong route. So even then, you saw Lambert being smart and just getting rid of a ball when there was clearly some problems on the play.
To that point, though, there was one open receiver. I can't remember if it was Sony. Was it
Malcolm Mitchell?
I couldn't remember if it was him or Sony Michel. They were wide open, and Lambert, again, earlier this week, took full responsibility for not hitting that guy. He was overzealous trying for a touchdown, which, I mean, that's what a quarterback's supposed to do. You're supposed to go in there and lead your team to more points. So I don't really have a problem with him being a little over anxious on that play.
I don't know. I think he should have completed that pass. He should have been 100%.
Yeah, come on. But, hey, great play. There's always room for improvement. And
that's right.
Sounds like coach talk, but you saw a great example of it right there.
Absolutely.
And with, the way the guys played, a lot of focus on Grayson Lambert, but also Georgia got some really good production out of the running backs. Nick Chubb did some more Nick Chubb things. 21 carries for 159 rushing yards, a pair of touchdowns after being shut out against Vanderbilt in the touchdown category. Sony Michel had another great game, 8 carries, 51 yards, also a touchdown. And he also got involved in the passing game, 3 receptions, 32 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just made some of the Gamecocks defenders just look silly out there.
He made me look silly, too, because if you'll recall, last week I picked South Carolina to win the game.
Wait,
31,
what? Wait,
31 to 17.
I don't. What you pick? Oh, okay. I just go on. Go ahead. I just know how good you are on these predictions.
It was kind of a weird stammer there for a second. I thought you were having a stroke.
No, it's just amazing, really.
Well, that was about to be funny. I think Jordan kind of really ruined it.
Anyway.
But yeah. Nick Chubb, Sonny Michel, great games again. Sonny Michel is really, we saw a little bit of it last year, but he was hampered by the shoulder injuries, obviously. He's really developed into a very good weapon on the offense. We talked so much about how they could mix up Isaiah McKenzie in the kick return game, receiving game, and even in the running game on end rounds. And Sonny Michel is just as versatile. And he, in my opinion, right now, so far this year, he's a better weapon than Isaiah McKenzie's been.
Absolutely. The 2 receptions which went for touchdowns were phenomenal plays that, not only was Sonny open, but, he was charging towards the end zone. One play was to the left. They were both swing passes. One was to the left, one was to the right. And if y'all get a chance to take a look at it, you definitely should. But Sonny runs out to the edge, and then they were almost mirrored plays is what it looked like. So he runs to the edge, jukes a guy out, and then gets in the end zone. One in which he broke a tackle, and the other he stands the guy up on the goal line and just stares him down in the end zone. So, they were phenomenal plays, and Sony just had a phenomenal game along with Nick Chubb's performance.
And I will say, though, while we're talking about this, great victory for Georgia, but I think you really see South Carolina is not a good team. If you look at the way they played defense, Lambert, more often than not, was throwing to wide open guys.
Mm-hmm.
There were some plays, if you went back and watched the film, that it was just, the guy was just wide open. And, a quarterback's supposed to hit those guys. So, great game for Georgia, but the Gamecocks looked really bad, especially they were bad on defense. They were really bad on offense. They only had 258 yards of offense. Quarterback situation is just a mess there. They just look off kilter, and I felt like coming in, you always give the benefit of the doubt to Steve Spurrier, but it's just something that, it looks ugly, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. I
feel like this is almost how Georgia should have played South Carolina more times than not in the past decade. If you look at the talent and the way that these two teams, not just this year, but in years past, if you put Georgia and South Carolina, it should go about the way that Saturday did. Yes, there were a few years in which South Carolina did it. They had a great team coming back to whenever they had, they just had some phenomenal players on their team, along with being coached by the old ball coach. So I'm just impressed that this went the way that it almost should have, and I feel like a lot of other people had that impression as well.
I want to go back really quickly. Jordan, you mentioned how good Georgia's defense was. Obviously, the 258 total yards of offense. What's really astounding about it, if you go back to the first 2 weeks, Leonard Floyd had a great game against UL Monroe. Jordan Jenkins obviously had a great game against Vanderbilt. This week, nobody really stood out. Dom Sanders had an interception. Malcolm Parrish had one of his best games in the secondary, just shutting down the receivers, but Jake Gaines led the way for Georgia's defense.
And got a fiance.
Yes, in the process.
And even he only had 7 tackles. So while Georgia didn't have one player step up and just play great on defense, it was a very well-rounded attack by the defense.
Exactly.
And I think that's even more impressive because you're not relying on your two senior. Well, Gaines is a senior, but you're not relying on your two most experienced players in Jenkins and Floyd. And it was just a very impressive, dominating performance overall by the Georgia defense. And it's something that I would not have expected to see coming into this season.
So do you give credit to both of you guys? Do you give credit to Georgia playing really good defense or just South Carolina's offense being that bad?
I think it's a mix of both, honestly.
I think so.
South Carolina has one offensive playmaker, and it's Pharaoh Cooper. So in that regard, you could blame it on South Carolina's offense. But if you look at Pharaoh Cooper, he was shut down the entire game. You got to give credit to Georgia's defense there. So I think it's both.
I agree with Justin. South Carolina's not good, but at the same time, they have a few playmakers that could have had big games, and Georgia's defense didn't let them.
So with that, we are going to move from the past to the future. Southern Georgia Happening
Not to
tomorrow.
be confused with Georgia Southern.
No, not
Southern Georgia.
Southern versus Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me.
You go.
No, you're good.
Southern, they were 9-4 last season. They lost the SWAC championship game. And I've heard one of the stipulations for Southern coming to play here was that Southern had to bring their band. Southern, obviously being an all-black college, has had a notoriously spectacular band. So I know a lot of people are looking forward to seeing that halftime show. But besides the halftime show, aside from those band geeks, not dissing them. I love people in band because
Sure
I have tons of friends in it. Anyway, taking a look at the game that's going on tomorrow, what do you guys think is going to be the key matchup?
For me, I mean, we all know going into this that it's a mismatch. I mean, an SEC team playing a SWAC team, it's not a good matchup. So really, Georgia's main focus, honestly, to me, is stopping their special teams. Southern's got really good special teams, a punt returner, a kick returner, Willie Green, who has just been dominating. He's so far this early in the season, he's already got 2 kickoff returns for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown. And the punt return, he's only had 2 returns in punt coverage, and he returned one of them for a touchdown. So you see how good he is. He's 5'5", but he's electrifying. He's hard to get a hold on. So it's something that, I don't expect this to be close, but if, as long as Georgia covers the kicks and punts early on, that's the only thing that I think can keep Southern close early on.
I disagree. I mean, this guy's obviously a very good playmaker, but Southern has 3 or 4 really good wide receivers who they've got 3 or 4 guys who have at least 100 yards receiving, and they have one player who has over 200 yards receiving. That's a pretty good total through 3 games, and it's more than Georgia's got. I mean, they've got Sonny Michel and Malcolm Mitchell who are playing very well in the receiving game, as we alluded to earlier. And I don't think Southern is going to beat Georgia by any stretch, but I think they could present a challenge to the Georgia secondary if they start airing it out. Special teams will be something interesting to watch because Georgia, over the last several years, has not been a very good team on special teams, especially defending. But in my opinion, I think the biggest key is defending those wide receivers.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Southern, I know they have a pretty good offense, and Coach Rick definitely seemed to be talking about how they were by no means a cupcake at the press conference on Tuesday. But I think if Georgia plays as they should and they play to their strength, and if their defense shows up and just does what they routinely should do, I mean, this is going to go off without a hitch. So with that, we're going to go into score predictions. So what do you guys think is going to be the outcome of this game on Saturday?
I'm going to say 63-7 because, I mean, Rick was just using coach talk earlier, which he should. That's part of his job.
Oh, definitely.
But saying that, they're not a cupcake. They are a cupcake. We all know this is just a warm-up game before they play. Who do they play next week? Oh, they play Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I couldn't even think of that game, Another SEC game, nothing special about that. But, this is just a filler game where Georgia's going to, fourth quarter is going to just be a bunch of backups getting some playing time, and it's not going to be very much to watch.
For the second week in a row, I'm picking Georgia to lose. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, really.
I'm not going to be stupid 2 weeks in a row. I hope not. If Georgia loses this game, you can't call it a stupid pick because that's just bad football on their part. I think Georgia's got this one. I'm going to show a little more respect, Jordan, than you did to Southern. I think they put up 17 points. But no more. I think Georgia wins 50-17.
If Georgia was to lose this game, there would be anarchy in Athens.
Absolutely, and there was almost anarchy in Auburn a few weeks
Jacksonville
ago.
State.
Oh yeah, they definitely gave them a scare. And that, Jordan, you were saying, Coach Rick was giving old coach talk. Yes, we all know, like they have to. It's almost required that they have to say that to respect the team that's coming in to play them. But I mean, you never know. Who would have expected Jacksonville State to have scared Auburn that way? So, as far as the scores go, I'm going to go right in the middle of you guys. I'm going to say that Georgia wins this 52-13. I see a lot of backups getting playing time about once we put up 42 or so. And then I think we should expect to see a lot of the younger guys, Terry Godwin, Trenton Thompson, getting in this game and getting some on-field experience and some playing time.
we didn't plan on discussing this, but really quickly, I think it's worth mentioning. Nick Chubb is very close to tying Herschel Walker's streak of 100-yard rushing games. He could tie next week against Alabama and break it the week after. Personally, I think we're going to see a lot of Nick Chubb in the first quarter of this game. I think they're going to run it down Southern's throats and try to get him to that 100-yard plateau. How much Nick Chubb do you guys think we're going to see this week, considering that Georgia wants to keep him healthy, should want to keep him healthy for Alabama?
I don't know if he gets 100 yards, and it's just because, we've seen him go real conservative when they play when they play teams like Southern. So I feel like it's going to be like a first quarter deal. So unless he breaks one, we may not see it. So it's just something that he's going to, if he does it, he's going to have a few really big runs.
I agree, because #TBT to last year when Todd Gurley when Todd Gurley only carried the ball 6 times against Troy. Everyone was coming in, oh yeah, Georgia's going to just beat the absolute crap out of Troy. Everyone knew it. In which they did 66-0. But in that game, Todd Gurley only had 6 carries and 73 yards. I guess this is where a lot of the questions come up. We're trying to keep him healthy, especially after what happened the year before. But I'm going to say that Nick Chubb does not get 100 yards in this game. I think it's going to kind of be in the back of their minds. But, if it's going to be an issue of, okay, we need to keep guys healthy, especially for next week and the week after, because we're getting in the thick of the tough SEC and SEC East schedule. So I honestly don't see Chubb getting 100 yards. I see him getting close. I think he'll have around 70 or 80, but I don't think that he is going to end up with 100. And I'm afraid to say it. I think the streak's going to be snapped this week.
At any rate, it's going to be very intriguing to watch and see how often he gets used, and if he does, in fact, keep the streak alive.
Yeah, good point that you raised. With that, we're going to move from college football into professional football. National Football League matchup of the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys is going on Sunday. The last meeting was in 2012 when the Falcons won 19-13, which I believe was in Atlanta, was it not?
Yes.
So with that, we are going to take a look at some of the matchups in that game. So, Justin, with you being the Dallas Cowboys expert, lead us off in this.
Well, the biggest story here is not who is going to be on the field Sunday. It's who's not going to be on the field. Tony Romo is obviously, in my opinion, the biggest injury here. He's out with a broken collarbone. He's projected to be out for the next several weeks, as is Dez Bryant, who, in my opinion, is the best wide receiver in the NFL. And I was thoroughly looking forward to seeing Dez Bryant versus Julio Jones. I'm kind of disappointed that we're not going to get that opportunity. But, he can't help that he's hurt. And Dallas has some other key injuries in the defense and just kind of all over the place. Dallas has been really peppered with injuries ever since the offseason. And it's going to be a very intriguing matchup because of that. You're going to have Brandon Weeden start for the Cowboys at quarterback. Kellen Moore is going to be his backup. Don't know how that's going to play out, if they may pull the trigger on Weeden if he plays poorly. He looked good last week in relief, but he proved last year that you can't judge his ability off of a relief appearance, because when Romo went down last year against the Redskins on Monday Night Football, Weeden came in, looked very good, just like he did last week. And he started the next week against Arizona, obviously a much better team than Washington, and just looked horrible. So the key to this game is absolutely Brandon Weeden.
I agree. Weeden, we've seen very little of him, and when we have got to see him play, it's been inconsistent. Like you said, he looked good last week, but who knows how he'll play on Sunday. And an injury with the Falcons that I think people may not be really paying attention to at running back, Tevin Coleman. He's played, fairly well for a rookie with the Falcons this year. He's out with a rib injury. You got Devontae Freeman, former running back at Florida State. He's going to be getting the bulk of the carries. And to me, we all know that Matt Ryan's probably going to throw for a lot of yards, and Julio's going to be his number one target. We've seen that so far this year. But can they establish the run against Dallas? It's something that, so far this year they've done a much better job running the ball than they have, for the last at least 2 or 3 years of the Mike Smith era in Atlanta. So, with Coleman out, that definitely hurts that charge. They really need to see what they can do with Freeman back there, I feel like if they get the run going, that they've got a fairly good shot. But if the Cowboys defense understands that they are having no luck running the ball, it could be a long afternoon for Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm going to expand on that. If Atlanta's offense becomes one-dimensional and they know that Ryan's going to throw it first, second, and third down, and they just absolutely can't get anything on the ground, if Dallas can make Atlanta's offense one-dimensional, this game's going to be over real quick, regardless of how Brandon Weeden does, because, unless he throws 4 or 5 interceptions. But I think offense is going to be a little bit of an issue for both of these teams. It's going to be a matter of shutting down the running game in order to make Atlanta's offense a pass-only offense. And on the other side of the ball, if the Falcons can shake Brandon Weeden's confidence, then I think it's going to be a battle of defenses. So look for that to happen. The only thing that I could see being a potential just absolute runaway is the quarterback-receiver matchup. So if Ryan just goes off on Julio and he racks up his yards and makes his fantasy owners really happy, then that could be an issue. And if Brandon Weeden can somehow connect to his receiving core, then that will be an issue for Atlanta's defense as well.
I wanted to go back really quickly. You guys mentioned the running game. Atlanta, obviously, overall, Atlanta is a much better team this season than they were last year. I want to make a quick point in a few minutes about why I think Atlanta should be winless at this point, despite that, but we'll get there in a second. This season, Dallas has only allowed 106 total rushing yards against the Giants and the Eagles. And the Eagles, according to everybody outside of the Dallas Cowboys fandom who knows better, quote-unquote, picked up the best running back in the NFL in DeMarco Murray. I thoroughly enjoyed watching DeMarco Murray get shut down and realizing he shouldn't have left Dallas for the money. The Cowboys, I don't know what has happened, but that running defense, granted they play 2 terrible teams, the running defense is much better than I would have dreamed. The passing defense, the secondary, still leaves much to be desired, but that's to be expected when you have as many injuries as they do in that unit. And it's going to be very interesting to see if Atlanta can set up a running game against this team. I don't think they will. I think you're going to see, as you mentioned, Jared, I think Matt Ryan is going to throw it out to Julio very often, early and often, and I think they're going to rack up a ton of yards. I think they'll account for at least 80% of – I think that connection will account for at least 80% of Atlanta's total offense. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to be enough because it's going to be so one-dimensional.
It's definitely – like we've said, it all depends on how the Falcons can handle the offense. We've seen enough – early on in the season, but with Coleman out, not there, it's definitely a big question mark. And the Falcons' defense has been bend but don't break so far. So it's a matchup that there's a lot of kind of going back to Wheaton inconsistencies. Can they keep up what they've already been able to do before?
The biggest thing with this game is, yes, both of these teams are 2-0, and they played the same opponents, and they played both of those opponents about the same way. Personally, I don't think Dallas should be 2-0. I think the Cowboys should be 0-2, and I think the Falcons should be 0-2 as well. I don't think either team should have won the games they won. There's something to be said for winning, but personally, I didn't see enough to make me think that Atlanta or Dallas was the better team in those games. And I think this week is the week we're going to learn what these two teams are made of. I think we're going to see if Atlanta can truly establish a running game, if they can truly be clutch like they were last week. And it's going to be a very intriguing matchup. To the point about the Dallas defense, Sean Lee is having an amazing season so far. It's kind of weird to say through 2 games, but he missed all of last season and was not very good the year before because of injuries. And he's been plugging the middle of that defense there at middle linebacker. I think he is the key for Dallas's defense. I think if Sean Lee can get up the middle and plug some of these runs, I think Dallas should have no problem.
So with that, what do you guys think is going to be the outcome of the game?
I'm going to say the Falcons win 24-21, and I'll be the first to say that I didn't do that as a homer pick with me being a Falcons fan. To me, it's all about Tony Romo not being there. I feel like if Romo was there for Dallas, that Dallas would probably beat the Falcons. But I got Atlanta winning 24-21. I think it will, even without Tony Romo. I expect Brandon Wheaton to have a pretty good game, and Matt Bryant for the Falcons comes through, and they win it 24-21.
I'm going to go just a few points shot on both sides of the scoreboard. I'm going to say Atlanta wins 20-17. I still think that both offenses are going to struggle a little bit getting on with as good as Dallas's defense has been. And, with Tony Romo being out, I think Dallas's offense struggles as well. So this is going to be a little bit of a low-scoring matchup, but Atlanta wins 20-17.
Not so fast, my friend.
Well, the Dallas fan disagrees. Let's see what he says.
I'm not making this pick as a homer, as a Cowboys fan. I'm looking at it as objectively as I possibly can. Atlanta is going to be one-dimensional because, as I mentioned before, Dallas's running defense is great. Yes, Romo is hurt. Yes, Dez Bryant is hurt. Yes, we have a questionable quarterback coming in Brandon Wheaton. But he's got Jason Witten, Terrence Williams, Joseph Randle, Lance Dunbar, Cole Beasley. He's got a ton of people that he can lean on to make plays. And Witten is a question mark at this point because of his ankle issues. But people don't realize Jason Witten's feet could be completely chopped off, and he'd run out there on nubs and play football. And even if he doesn't play very much, they've got Gavin Escobar backing him up, and he's arguably just as good at this point because he's a little younger, a little faster than Witten. I'm picking the Cowboys. I'm going to say 27-13. I think Matt Ryan and Julio Jones put up some big numbers, but I don't think they're going to be good enough to score enough points in the clutch to beat the Cowboys.
We shall see. I'm sure that we might mention this next week.
Maybe so.
It might come up.
Depends how the outcome of the game goes.
Yeah, really. We might not be mentioning it. Justin might.
I'm going to be gloating. I'm going to spoiler alert. The Cowboys are going to win. I'm going to gloat my tail off next week. Be prepared.
Says the guy that picked South Carolina.
Hey, it can't be perfect.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to move into our buzzer beater segment. So, starting off in the Indianapolis Colts world, Justin, take us away.
Colts head coach Chuck Pagano recently threw Andrew Luck under the bus, basically, about his turnovers so far this season. Do you guys think Pagano is on the hot seat?
I do. Coming into the season, there were rumors that he wasn't getting along with the GM. I kind of didn't believe it because they've been so good, but I'm starting to think it looks like the wheels are falling off in Indy.
I'm going to say so, especially with the performance that happened against the Jets. Granted, the Jets' defense is pretty good, but Luck just didn't look good, and some of the questions of Pagano, like of his play calling ability, was just bad.
Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger says the team will continue to go for two after touchdowns. Do you guys like the strategy?
I actually do. I think teams should go for two a whole lot more often. Yes, it's either a success or a fail, but if you get it 50% of the time either way, it's going to average out. So why not put your offense out on the field a little bit more and give the fans something to cheer about?
I love it. Run it up.
David Wright of the New York Mets called his F-bomb towards Freddie Freeman playful. Do you guys believe him?
I don't know, but either way, it kind of doesn't matter. I can't blame him because Freeman is starting to be like Chipper Jones was of the Mets. He just continues to harass them, and it's completely understandable if you're mad at him.
There's always been a rivalry between the Mets and the Braves, and for the most part, it's been friendly. I don't see an issue with it. Washington Nationals general manager Mike Rizzo said that everyone on the team will be evaluated at the conclusion of this season. Do you guys think Matt Williams, the manager, is on the chopping block?
I think he is because Washington has underperformed in a division that's not very good. You've got some really, really weak talent, and Williams has made some questionable calls. I think he's out.
I'm going to say that he is. They may give him one more year, but I don't see it happening. Like you said, the Nats underperforming in the NL least.
Pretty much.
Where the Phillies are bad, the Mets are really good, the Marlins are bad, and the Braves are,
the Braves.
I'll leave that off. They're absolutely awful. But I definitely see him being on the chopping block.
Redskins quarterback Kirk Cousins has been charging fans for autographs. How would you respond as a fan?
Hey, can I have your autograph? Sweet. Okay, here's $10. I mean, why not? If you're a fan and you're willing to pay for it, let the market decide.
The real question is, if you're a Redskins fan, why are you even asking for his autograph in the first place? Because Kirk Cousins is terrible.
Hey, I would probably pay for it and then go to the bar in D.C. where they're giving free drinks for every time he throws a pick. So, hey, you saving money there?
You would black out very quickly.
It would be a dangerous situation.
Speaking of dangerous situations, Bart Scott says Chip Kelly, quote, thinks he's smarter than everybody, unquote. Is this a fair claim?
I think it is. I think Chip Kelly does think he's smarter than everybody, but Chip Kelly is wrong.
It's not looking good for Chip, but I kind of get the impression that that's the way he thinks about things. You saw the way he got power in Philly. It's sort of like he thinks he can handle it all on his own, and so far, not looking so good.
He is God.
And it ain't working.
Yeah, the team sucks under his leadership. Pete Rose met with Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred yesterday afternoon about appealing his permanent ban. At this point, it's expected that the ban remains intact. Do you guys like the decision?
I don't, and we've got into this debate before, but he's one of the greatest hitters of all time. I understand it, but to me, I think he belongs in.
I'm still torn in this issue. I'm going to say I don't like the decision because it's based on a rule that was so many years ago. And yes, I understand they're trying to keep the integrity in baseball, but I don't like the decision. I think they need to reinstate him.
So Tennessee has lost 10 straight games against the Florida Gators, and they play on Saturday. Will the Vols finally break that streak?
Absolutely. I was wrong about how good Florida would be, and I'm going to go ahead and admit it. Florida does not win the SEC East, but Tennessee is looking pretty good, minus the game that they pretty much forfeited to Oklahoma. But I think Tennessee breaks the streak, beats Florida, and they're going to go ahead and take charge in the SEC.
Florida is 3-0, and it has not been extremely close to losing a game that it shouldn't have lost. Tennessee, on the other hand, lost to Oklahoma and gave up a ton of points to Bowling Green. You're going to say Tennessee's better than Florida. We're not going to debate it. Florida wins again in their trek to the SEC championship game. Florida wins 25-13.
Not picking Tennessee because until they do it, I don't believe in them. I've got enough family that's Tennessee fans. I've watched it happen too many times. This is the year. It's not the year Florida wins again.
Oh, I'm not saying it's fun to be a Tennessee fan, but I think it's even less fun to be a Florida fan. So we'll see. So thank you, everybody, very much for listening. You should definitely check us out on Twitter at Jay-3 Show.
And also check out our website, Jay3sports.wordpress.com.
All right. Well, thanks, guys, for listening, and we appreciate your help.